Hello and welcome, I'm David, and this is Almost a Country, a show in which I listen to centuries-old oral tales, reconstruct the facts of old rural legends, and most importantly, try to share with you my love for failed attempts to declare a country. When hearing the phrase, "I've never heard of that country," you could picture it being uttered by someone from a large, rich nation who doesn't have an idea about the larger world. Or you could picture an obscure, economically struggling country somewhere in the developing world. Or you could picture the Republic of Senarica, for which that phrase could have very well been their national motto. Scenarica is a small community in Italy, specifically in the province of Abruzzo. It lies approximately the same distance from the eastern coast of Italy as the relatively nearby Rome does from the western coast. Today, you would visit it as a part of the town of Crognaletto, but in the 1300s it was a village in its own right. As I described in my video about D'Annunzio and his regency of Carnaro, the Middle Ages were a period of near constant discord, bloodshed and political strife for Italy. Divided into the northern city-states and principalities of the Holy Roman Empire, the central Italian Papal States, and the southern kingdoms of Sicily and Naples, infighting for whatever reason was on the daily order of affairs. One of these conflicts was a war over the control of the Kingdom of Naples in 1343. It is a long and complex story, so I will try to simplify it. The Neapolitan king, Robert, passed away and left the kingdom to his underage girl boss daughter, Joanna, who, after many plot twists, decided that she would rule the Kingdom of Naples alone, as a queen regnant. By some accounts, she even murdered her equally underage husband, Prince Andrew of Hungary. This murder is said to have been committed by hanging the poor prince by the balls out of a window. Needless to say, such a thing can cause quite a ruckus. Many lords of northern Italy saw this as an opportunity to expand their influence and territories at the expense of the realm of the scheming child queen. Among those were the Visconti family, who ruled Milan and the surrounding territories. They sent out an invasion force under Ambrogio Visconti to cut themselves a piece of the Neapolitan cake. However, as their army marched south, through Abruzzo, an unlikely force of defenders descended upon them. A crowd of woodcutters, shepherds, and farmers from the village of Scenarica eventually forced the Visconti retinue to turn back and retreat to Milan. News of this brave defense reached the ears of Joanna, and the young queen decided to reward these villagers rather generously. Every person living in Scenarica and its neighboring settlement was ennobled to the rank of baron, exempt from tax duty until the end of time, and most importantly, she granted the village the right of self-government. Now, according to ancient Lombard law, these privileges were inheritable by all offspring of the grantee. The excited peasants of Scenarica pondered on what to do with their new and vast freedom that they would later pass on to their children. The ennoblement of everyone meant that nobody was above anybody else. These people who were raised in a world that emphasized rigid social hierarchy they were at the bottom of now found themselves in a community where everyone was equal. And there was only one other society like this that the Scenaricans heard of. For centuries, the most serene Republic of Venice was a shining example to the rest of the world that a republican society can work. Venice was a thalassocratic capitalist superpower of the European Middle Ages and Renaissance. Sure, it had quite a long way to a modern liberal democracy, but it was the most egalitarian system the Scenaricans could ever think of. They decided to model their new government by copying the Venetians religiously. After writing a constitution, the Statutes of Scenarica, in 1357, they formed a senate, which was made up of 24 senators under 50 years of age, who convened the first day of each year. They passed their own laws, appointed their own judges, and held regular elections for the head of state, the Doge. No, not that one. This one. The Doge was not like your average feudal ruler of the time. He had far from absolute power in the Little Republic. The position of Chancellor of the Senate was created to keep an eye on the Doge's dealings, and his countersignature was required to pass the Doge's laws. More so, the Scenarican constitution defined that the Doge could only be a gentleman who could neither read nor write. In other words, not too well educated to outsmart his neighbors. Even these precautions sometimes faltered, though. From 1549 to 1579, the Doge Enrico Cantu transformed the Republic into an authoritarian dictatorship for 30 years and changed his title from Doge to Duke. These positions were all frequented by the village's most powerful families: Cicinto, Ciantone, Della Valle, Ceccarelli, Cantu, and Latini. Many of these are extant to this day and consider themselves to be of noble blood. The Cicinto family was by far the most elected, scoring 15 out of the total 36 doges in Scenarican history. With regards to economy, the small republic's main resource was chestnut wood. Indeed, Scenarica was engulfed by a great chestnut forest. As such, their exports included edible chestnut fruits, raw chestnut wood, and various kinds of furniture made from it. Republic of Senarica also had the sovereign right to mint their own currency, although it seems it never exercised this right. Scenarica also maintained a small defense force, the Doge's Guard, whose main task was protecting the persons of the Doge, the Chancellor, and the Senators. Another armed force of Scenarica were the Rangers. They maintained peace within the village and also in the surrounding forests, guarding borders and protecting game from poachers. The relationship between Scenarica and Venice doesn't end just in using the same system of governance. The Venetians allegedly viewed Scenarica as their small republican sister and extended their protection over it. As a part of their military alliance, Scenarica was required to send a yearly tribute of 12 golden pugs to Venice, and, in times of war, supply the token force of 2 soldiers to complement the Venetian army. One such documented occasion was the Battle of Lepanto, in which the Venetian navy successfully routed the forces of the Ottoman Empire. After the battle, the Doge of Venice publicly gifted the 2 Scenaricans a letter of recognition of Scenarican bravery and loyalty that was addressed to the Doge of Scenarica. The soldiers presented the letter to their Doge, and the letter was then stored in the palace of the Bishop of Teramo. Remember that one of the lawful requirements for the assumption of the office of the Doge was that the person elected had to be illiterate. But all good things must come to an end eventually, and for the Republic of Senarica, that time came in 1775. The King of Naples of the time, Ferdinand IV of Bourbon, learned that a small village in the hills of Abruzzo province hasn't paid any taxes to the royal treasury in, well, forever. Intrigued, the king prompted an investigation and was shocked to discover a village full of people who claimed they didn't have to pay any taxes since they were all nobles and their village was an independent country. While the investigators the king sent allegedly confirmed that some privileges existed that exempted Scenarica from taxation, the king's prime minister Bernardo Tanucci viewed Scenarica's existence as a dangerous precedent. The 18th century was a time when centralization and bureaucratization of administrative power was long overdue, and feudal privileges were considered outdated institutions. He, therefore, convinced the king that it was for the best if the village is seized and privileges are revoked. The Scenarican government tried to resist as much as possible without bloodshed. The Doge Bernardino Ciquinto first went into exile and tried to form an exile government, but eventually he passed the title of Doge of Scenarica onto his son-in-law, Baron Sigismund de Nordangelis of Sicily. Sigismund eventually gave the title up in 1797, the official end year of the Republic of Senarica. Now you may think, wait on a second, how is this an almost country? It existed for almost 5 centuries, by what metric was this a failed attempt? Well, here's the thing. Not many people believe it actually ever existed. Those documents regarding all those royal grants of privileges by Queen Joanna of Anjou, well, the Anjou royal chancellery, where they were supposed to have been, was conveniently bombed to the ground in 1949 by Allied air raids against Naples during World War II. What about that letter of recognition sent by the Doge of Venice? Well, it's nowhere to be found in the archives of the Bishop of Teramo. Indeed, there isn't any mention of Scenarica in any written document that survives within the city of Venice. And since illiteracy was a requirement for the Republic's most prestigious office, there aren't many written historical documents in Scenarica of any kind at all. Therefore, many historians claim that Scenarica is a mere legend, made up by the locals as a tax avoidance scheme. But even so, there are hints that support the historical existence of the tiny republic. Sometime between 1830 and 1849, Monsignor Alessandro Berettini, who was the Bishop of Teramo at the time, publicly testified that he had the aforementioned Venetian letter in his possession. Interestingly enough, inhabitants of Scenarica to this day speak a strange spoken dialect of Italian that uses many words found only in medieval Venetian language. Linguists ponder as to how did something so specific to northeastern Lombardy find its way to the forest of Abruzzo, half a country away. The main village square in Scenarica is marked by a large sign that says Piazza Venezia, or Venetian Square, which it was supposedly called since time immemorial. On that very square stands a medieval statue of a lion strangling a serpent, a symbol Scenaricans claim to have been on their Republican flag, as a memento of their vanquishing of the army of the Visconti family, whose symbol is a serpent. On the oldest buildings still standing in Scenarica, the words Casa Franca, essentially meaning tax-free house, and R.D. Scenarica can be found etched into stone walls and wooden beams. And finally, Republic of Senarica shows up in the works of renowned 19th century cartographers and historians of the Kingdom of Naples, whose credibility was otherwise never questioned. At this point, we are left at an intellectual crossroads, where it's really up to us to decide whether we believe the Republic of Senarica to have existed. Contemporary Scenaricans choose to believe that their small village was once an independent country, one which helped to defeat the Turks at Lepanto, one which could tie its glory to the glory of the Republic of Venice, and holds festivals with guests from the Venetian city administration each year to celebrate their perspective on their mutual history. Is it a simple case of wish fulfillment, where a group of insignificant people looked for a better place in the monumental patchwork of historical events and figures? Or was it a tax avoidance scheme so crazy that its creators started to believe in it? Or is the Republic of Senarica a genuine historical entity that just left so few historical footprints that it's starting to lose itself in the deep ocean of human memory? Well, what do you think? Thank you all for watching my videos and morally supporting me in doing what I love. I know I said this video would only take some 3 weeks to make, and it took me half a year again. This was mainly due to the fact that my full-time job took most of my waking hours lately. However, for those who would like to see these videos come out much more frequently, I would like to announce that I have made a Patreon where you can support my work. Every small contribution will help me focus less on digging through Excel spreadsheets and more on digging through history with you. To pay you guys back, I have decided to base some videos on fan requests. Fellow esteemed historian Thomas Watson commented under the Don Cossack episode it would be nice to see me do some videos on the other failed Russian civil era states like Alash Orda. So Thomas, that is exactly what we are going to do next time. The mythical beginnings and the humble ends of Alash Orda. Stay tuned and goodbye for now.